This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
It's 11:06 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. Well, as they say in the Bible,
Ask a Rabbi.
Christ turned water to wine. Our rabbi turns cactuses into mangoes.
Cactuses into mangoes. Well, I did bring mangoes today. Okay, I did.
Well, let me tell you, the ones you brought in a few weeks back were awesome.
Well, these that I have today are actually picked right off of my tree. I'm having carpet issues here.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, too many carpets. There we go. Now I've got the mic close to me.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And poor Craig is over there trying to check it. Okay. Anyway, things are plugged in. I need to get over. Yeah, look at those gorgeous mangoes. He's going to drop them on the floor and give him some extra bruises because, you know, it's more fun that way.
Sure.
Anyway, This is Rabbi Shafir Loeb of Congregation Eitz, Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. What can I say? So, trying to share this over to the webpage. That's never a fast thing. Share to a page. I gotta love it, you know.
I don't know how you do that stuff.
Well,
I don't understand any of it. That's why we have an engineer, I guess.
I gotcha. And there it goes. Okay. And it, of course, is noisy right now, so I need to turn off the volume on it. Or we'll hear. No, it's not moving. Okay, there we go. So we are in good shape. Yay, technology finally hits its pieces, and we are in good shape. Yay.
Good stuff. All right.
Yeah. And so, you know, I was coming in, and I had actually 3 different topics that I was going to talk about today, and I'm like, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I do want to tell you, by the way, those mangoes were picked this morning from the tree.
Woohoo!
So do enjoy them. They're nice and yellow.
Oh.
And
Cliff, I know, is going to take a few.
He's already had his nose in the bag.
There you go. All right. Good stuff. Yeah.
Yep. There you go. And they're delicious. That to me is a COVID gift, because I admit that I had not tasted a ripe mango. I take that back. I liked mango spears that I bought in the market, and I will tell you that the fresh mangoes that are really ripe are even better than what's in the stores. And I didn't really taste them until last year when I was doing the Torah Moments outside because of COVID, and the tree was shedding its amazing abundance of mangoes. And I started to research them a little bit, and I learned how to tell if they're ripe. And part of that I have to give to Shadow, my dog, because he loves to carry them around the yard.
Seriously?
Seriously. And he loves mango. He'll eat the mangoes that fall from the tree if they're ripe. So it's kind of a race between him and me, and the rabbits and the squirrels and the possums and everybody else. My other dog, Imp, will chase the possums and the rabbits and the squirrels, but he's not quite as interested in the mango.
Oh, by the way, I have to let you know.
Yeah?
That Carol and I had funeral services for that little plant that you brought last week.
No, I'm sorry.
I think our neighborhood rabbit
had
it for dinner.
Okay.
That was beautiful. You know, once we got it out to the front yard, blossom. It was that little guy was blossoming all the time, happy as a clam. Until the rabbit
came to it. Oh well. Well, the good news is that it probably will come up again next year because it's a bulb.
Oh, okay.
So
the rest of it's intact.
Yeah, you might well get flowers
next year.
Oh,
wow.
So we'll
okay,
see.
well, that's cool. Well,
we'll see how that goes.
Still planted.
In Florida, they tend to... Some bulbs won't flower here because they don't get a freeze. You have to dig them up and put them in your fridge for a month or two, and then you can replant them.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah,
That's wild.
You got to winter them, and because they need the freeze.
Winter them. Mm-hmm. Wow.
It's so one of the ways that I learned about that little piece, as we digress into plants, which is not where I was going to go, but that's okay, I grew lilac in Tucson. And everybody will tell you can't grow real lilac in Tucson. Yes, you can, but you have to make it a shade plant. So I put it underneath a mesquite tree, and it grew. I take that back. I'm not sure if it was a mesquite. It was one of the larger trees in the backyard. And I put it in the shade of that tree, and it did well. What it needed, though, that it can't get here in Florida, was frost. It needed freezing. And the winters that had the coldest nights, I had the most flowers come spring.
Wow.
So I actually gave away real lilacs to people from my yard in Tucson.
Wow, that is so cool. Well, it would work in North Florida.
Yes,
you do get
it would work in North Florida. You're correct. It just doesn't work here in
we're too far south.
Zone 10A, as we are called.
Oh, okay.
We are 10A.
So now, what did you want to talk about? now that we're halfway through the show. Oh.
So I was going to talk a little bit about, last week you had said that you wished people would get when I say one God, one universe, one human race. And I wanted to talk a little bit about anti-Semitism, about anti-Asianism, Islamophobia, any of those isms or otherisms. They're otherisms. They're othering people. And, why and where and what we might be able to do about that. Because there's a whole lot of that. And it's been around since dirt. And in early scavenger days, it made some kind of sense to hang to people who looked like you because you would be accepted into the crowd, and resources were scarce. And if resources are scarce, you have to pick who's in and who's out, who gets and who doesn't get, so that some will survive. Because if you share everything, nobody survives if there isn't enough. We live in a world where there is enough. There really is enough on this planet. For example, these mangoes. If I kept them all to myself, they'd rot and wouldn't do anybody any good. But because I give them to people, because I share them, there's an abundance there. Now, there's a little trick that I do to share more, which is that I cut and freeze them so I can share them all year.
Sure. Oh,
And I did that last year. I discovered somewhere along the line and got brave and froze 9 packages of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I got, and each package lasted about 3 or 4 days. So
sure.
So I spaced them through the winter until it started giving me mangoes again.
So cool.
Yeah. But, sharing the abundance that we have, and not just with the rabbits, there is enough food. And anybody who thinks there isn't, if instead of paying farmers not to grow food, if we paid them to grow, but the government bought those crops and redistributed them so that nobody was food insecure, imagine how much healthier our country could be.
But when you're talking about some of the, especially African nations that are dry, if you will, they can't grow anything, that's difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a question that's a reasonable question that somebody just put in, which is, how does somebody tune in to Digital 1590 if they're not watching me on Facebook Live?
Well, you can listen anywhere in the world.
Okay.
On TuneIn app on your phone, or right off our website of WPSL.com. You will be able to see you.
Okay.
a little bit later when
it goes on YouTube.
Cliff puts it on our YouTube page.
Okay, so let me go ahead and answer that one.
This is great.
WPSL.com.
Yep. They can listen.
Okay, WPSL.com.
And there's a listen here button, and just push it.
Okay. So that's one. Or you said TuneIn app.
Yep.
TuneIn app.
Or Google Home or
Google
Alexa.
Home, or Google Home, comma, Alexa. Whoops. If I spelled Alexa, it would work better.
Yep. So
there we go.
That's a way to do it.
Okay, so I just put some answers out there for people to listen in different ways.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, and even when I put WPSL, thank you, Facebook, it came up and said WPSL AM 1590 Port St. Lucie.
There you go.
So you even got an ID on that. There you go. I love technology.
Oh, my.
When it works.
So the isms.
The isms, right. So, in really, really ancient days, it paid when resources were hard and you had to gather, etc. Now, it's worth noting that hunter-gatherers actually... Oh, it just failed. Okay, yay. So we'll redo that. Apparently, we are having a moment.
Facebook again?
Yeah.
Well, they got hit earlier this week.
Yeah, it's been an interesting technological challenge this week. Anyway, getting back to resources, because that's where we're going. Share to a page, and it never brings up the right page. I love that about it. Okay, so we're streaming there. Okay, yay. Okay, so hunter-gatherers actually were taller, healthier, but they didn't have as much leisure time, even though they actually worked less than farmers.
So you're obviously talking about the 60s.
No, I'm talking
just
about
kidding.
way back when. And, over time, especially in the Levant area, the top right above Israel, that part of Turkey, that bridge, that's where wheat grows most plentiful naturally. And
okay.
Archaeologists can tell you when it was cultivated because the seeds start to change. When people started to cultivate it and make it not wild, they looked for fatter, easier to grow seeds. And it was done by selection. It wasn't obviously, GMO.
Yeah, I hope not.
But it was naturally modified or selected seeds. And they can see the shift from the randomness of nature to the intentional sowing of certain seeds.
That's amazing.
And they can tell when people started to cultivate it. And wheat, the current thinking is that has a lot to do with why people built cities. Because when you're a hunter-gatherer, you can sleep under the stars and it's wonderful and you move on. And you eat what you need and you have to gather every day. You don't get a day off when you're a hunter-gatherer.
Basic nomad.
Right, you're a nomad and you're doing whatever you do. It's day-to-day living. And if you want to take a couple of days off, then you have to stockpile food. And wheat worked very well for stockpiling because it was abundant. There was more than they needed. They gathered it, and then they had another problem. Every gift comes with a problem. And every problem comes with a gift. The problem of an overabundance of wheat was now you had to stockpile it somewhere. Right? So you had to put it somewhere where it wasn't going to spoil, where you could use it and do things with it. And baking is one of those things. In those days, they didn't have Fleischmann's or any of the other instant wheats. And you had to let it sit overnight so it got enough wheat, and then it would rise, and kind of a sourdough, kind of a batter. And but if you stockpiled it, then somebody could come in during the night or whenever and take your food, and then they wouldn't have had to have done the work of growing it and harvesting, etc. They could just grab the the existing stockpiles. And so we start to see defenses against other roaming nomadic opportunistic groups that would take advantage of it. And so then it becomes an us and them kind of thing. We did the work, it's our food. What have you got to trade for it? And trade starts.
Tribes of thieves.
Yeah, the thieves versus the traders. And traders obviously become much more of an ideal, because you don't mind somebody making a profit if they're exchanging things that you want and need. And your life gets better, and their life gets better, and it's a profitable system for everyone. Thievery never is, because people feel cheated, and rightfully so, because somebody does the work and somebody else enjoys the fruit. And so we see cities and armed protection starting to grow up as food starts to be cultivated and has to be stockpiled. And then you also start to see the cultivation of animals that are willing to be domesticated, such as sheep, goats, cattle. Right? Zebras are horses, and they're not willing to be cultivated. Right? They stay wild. You cannot break a zebra. Yes, there are some that are in zoos and can be somewhat handled, but you're not going to get out of them what you get out of like the Arabian horses and some of the other breeds of horses that become very amenable to interacting with humans.
So were zebras around back in the day?
I think they were. I think they've been around for a good while. They're just a particular strain that is not well inclined to certain kinds of things. It's notable that that Columbus and that group that came to America, one of the challenges they had with the American indigenous population was that it could not be easily subdued and made to do farm work. And so African people were stolen and forced to do that labor. And the quote unquote, undesirable native populations were driven off the land so that they could steal the land. And it has to do with the natural inclinations of people. Some people do certain things better than others. We all have aptitudes. We all have gifts, and some are more inclined to this or that. And a society, I think, functions best when you've got a nice mix of those personalities and aptitudes and tendencies. And, yeah. So we've got a world now that's much more connected. And you were talking about the plane last week that can fly faster than the speed of sound effectively. And, C-130s can take food all over the world.
They could,
in
yes.
a matter of hours.
Well, they've been doing that with the vaccines now.
Right. We've shown that we can do this, right? There was the Berlin airlift deal with, right, showing that you can airlift things in. We airlift stuff to cattle that gets stranded. We can use the technology that we have to create a better life so that nobody is having to go to bed hungry. Nobody's having to go to bed without clothes. Those are just simple things. And, it's not our place to dictate what those clothes should look like. Yes, we're going to have to share the foods of which we have an abundance. He's taking a picture of the mango over there. And, so, we can do this. This is within our reach. And so we no longer have to be marauding bands or protecting bands and trying to other people. But that is a knee-jerk gut reaction deep down inside our primal system, is to have a sense of fear that we won't have enough. That somehow the resources we have won't last. And if we need any proof of that, last year, the toilet paper, paper towel, napkin shortage, right?
Sure.
That was a man-made, a human-made crisis. That was not a real crisis. That was a human fear that we weren't going to be able to get those goods. And water, right? Bottled water.
Sure.
This fear that somehow we were going to instantly revert to nothing I'm sorry. That's just not going to happen. And it didn't. And slowly but surely, and the shelves are still not fully stocked because people in the supply system have learned that it's easier to supply 2 flavors of Starbucks coffee than, all of the different flavors. And, you've got spot shortages and stuff like that going on. And it will take a while until producers realize the importance of having the plentiful supply again. It'll come back.
Oh, what was funny you mentioned Starbucks? Looking at your Starbucks,
that's what made me think of it.
Is it what was it? Hazelnut, and there's a couple of other of their coffees that are not available because they can't get the nuts. Oh. It's like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, there are some issues in the supply chain, and they have more to do with the supply chain.
Oh, they're all supply chain issues.
Yeah. And that's just showing that we don't have that system worked out quite as well as it should be.
Ray was telling me a buddy of his is down at Suburban Chevy, I guess it is, down in Stewart. And he said, we've got 50 cars on order, and they're in Detroit because they can't be finished yet because of the supply chain issues there. It's crazy.
Yeah, there are just different kinds of spot shortages going on, and it'll work itself out eventually. It always does. I think back to the Cabbage Patch Dolls.
Oh my,
right?
Sure,
right.
I remember that.
Parents waiting in line hours and hours for a Cabbage Patch doll because the kid had to have this particular doll.
Showing up at Toys R Us at 1 a.m. or something.
Yeah. Some of those they're wonderfully marvelous marketing ploys. Create a shortage and people will come.
Sure. No, that's.
Yeah. And the prices, then you don't have to put it on sale, and you can use it as a leader into the store. Oh, but people aren't manipulatable that way.
No, they would never think of something like that.
No, we never have.
Oh, my.
I think of some of the different marketing games that have been played along the way. And some of them are marketing games, folks. Some of them are. And people fall for them. It's worth noting, people may not realize this, but when you walk into a supermarket, if you want to walk into a shopping lab, it is the supermarket. Supermarkets have really honed the study of how to make you pick up 2, 3, 4 of an item.
BOGO.
And BOGO is one. Guarantees that you're going to take 2 out. Instead of putting it at 50% off, which would give, you would buy what you need at the sale price or maybe buy 1 or 2 extra. If we make it a BOGO, that everybody walks out with 2. And we move more product, and therefore we can buy more and we get a lower price, et cetera, et cetera.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah, me as well. I'll buy a BOGO. Of course, I'm also one who typically buys 2 or 3 of something because I don't like going to the market every week, but that's me. And our diet is somewhat simple, so that works. But stores will do that. They actually will watch the shoppers as they go through the store and see how shoppers make their decisions.
Oh, that reminds me.
Okay.
Carol's love letter from Publix.
Yeah.
And, of course, you've got one of these infernal devices in front of you, too, an Apple phone.
I've got a whole bunch of infernal devices.
Yeah. And they now send newsletters to her.
On her phone.
These are some of your favorite items.
Oh, yeah.
They can track that iPhone through the store, so they know what we're buying. Oh, yeah. This is really eerie. I mean, it really is to me. It's like, oh my goodness.
If anybody thinks that we don't have, we are just constantly monitored. We are constantly tracked, and it's called the Internet of Things, IoT, Internet of Things. And Alexa and Google Home definitely contribute to it.
They're there,
right? Yeah. And I'm sure that people have noticed it. If you go looking at, say, blue dresses, on a website, you will suddenly get
on your Facebook page
a bunch of ads.
Yes.
All right, and it's all couched under we're going to improve your experience. We're going to improve the customer experience. And no, it's trying to push dollars, it's trying to do what Disney has always done so well, which is shake somebody upside down, empty their pockets, and make them smile. Right?
Disney shakedown.
My husband and I went to Disney on our honeymoon, and we came down. We stayed at Clearwater, and drove to Disney because pilots look at the map and think, "Oh, that's not far."
4.5 hours later,
yeah,
you get into the parking lot.
Yeah, and we were amazed then at how Disney could take people, turn them upside down, empty their pockets, and they'd leave smiling. And that has not changed, folks. It is a fun experience. And because people are having fun, they really don't mind spending the money.
Right.
And that's the secret of it. Supermarkets have learned how to empty your pockets as well. You might not leave smiling, and now we have this Internet of Things. So my iPad tracks me, my phone tracks me, my computer at home tracks me.
Yep.
And 1 million security cameras throughout the world track me as well. And anybody who thinks that they can't zoom in on any one individual and see a whole lot of stuff, we leave fingerprints all over the world. Not just fingerprints, but our mark through all of this. And there's just a ton of tracking. And can you minimize it by using things like burner phones? Yes, you can. But there are not as many burner phones out there anymore. You might notice that. There are still the little buy it, use it up, and throw it away phones.
Yeah.
Those are harder to track, but they can still track them.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
And, there's...
Just watch the FBI show.
Yeah, watch the FBI show. There you go. Any of those. NCIS,
sure.
The FBI, all kinds of things. And you've got pingers inside phones and things like that. You can do a little bit with it, but you're not going to, it's just a matter of time. And, many a crime today has been solved using technology or surveillance video, very different places. It wasn't that many years ago where people put up cameras that really didn't work. They were just there to pretend to record. But that's not true anymore. It's now so easy to record that the big thing there is to catch it before it writes over itself. But it's not a small tape anymore. It's now digital, so it stores.
Have you seen the pictures on Facebook? And it just says, pictures from Mars. And, of course, it's all this, 4K video from the Mars rover. And then pictures from your bank security camera. And it's all fuzzy and stuff. Mm-hmm. Well, that's changing.
Yeah.
That is changing.
It is changing.
Yeah.
As each of these groups does more and better security, we're getting cameras that now can zoom in. And, I did it on my iPhone. There was a hawk in the pine tree in my neighbor's yard, and I zoomed in on the hawk on my phone. And I don't have a fancy phone. I have a 7-something or other, right? So it's an old beast. Yeah.
Still has a camera.
It still has a camera, and it still has it doesn't have all the fancy stuff that the new 10, 11, et cetera have with their pros.
Don't need it.
Well, I would like it, but down the road. And so this is as good a time as any to say, folks, if you're enjoying Ask a Rabbi, a couple of things. One, feel free to give me a call at 772-340-1590. And also, if you'd like to, I would love to have you sponsor an episode of Ask a Rabbi. Just call that same number and talk to the radio station, and they will help you sponsor an Ask a Rabbi episode. And that gets you advertisements, folks. So we will do those ads during a show if you sponsor.
We will give you commercials outside the show.
And commercials outside the show.
Yep.
It's a really good deal. So please do consider sponsoring an episode of Ask a Rabbi. All right, this year, this time I remembered to do that. Next plug, our plant sale on the 27th and 28th of June. Not going to be where it usually is. It's going to be at the temple at 540 Northwest University Boulevard, Suite 102. That's in the middle of the front building right next to the elevators. And you'll see Eitz Chayim in the window and on the door. Look
for the gigantic sign, "We are open for business."
Well, we might have the door open and a few plants outside. So but we are going to be doing a plant sale at the temple. That's Sunday from 1 to 5 and Monday from 11 to 3. So come on your lunch hour, take the plant in. Don't cook it in the car. Take it back into work with you if you come on your lunch hour.
That is so cool. Yeah. Well,
it allows us a couple more hours of allowing people in, and
it's a neat idea.
So we're going to see how this works.
Neat idea. Yeah.
And okay, so back to othering. So why do we tend to do that? And part of it has to do with just a fear of things unknown. And the number of people who proclaim that so-and-so says this or so-and-so says that, as if they knew that it was true, is almost scary. Right? So I'll give you a popular one that made some rounds a while back. You don't hear it so much because, fortunately, people are getting a little bit smarter. So a couple of the ones. Jews have horns on their heads. That comes from a mistranslation of beams of light from Moses. That's why the statue has the horns on it, because the word for beams of light and the word for horns in Hebrew is the same.
Wait a minute. Back up.
The same word can be translated to two different English words. We have that too.
We get that for a million words.
We've got it for a million words where it means one thing or it means another thing. You know, well comes to mind, right? You know, many things. Bow, right?
Right.
Many different things. So it's not uncommon for that, and that was a misunderstanding, that saying that Moses had horns on his head. He had beams of, he was so flushed with God that he was beaming. That makes a lot more sense than wearing horns.
I'd never heard that.
Oh, I know people who have actually been patted down on their heads saying, "Where are your horns?" I wish I didn't know that, but I do know people who've had that happen to them.
This is not a joke.
I'm not joking. No. There are people who have. That was a very common thing. Yeah. People actually were that crazy to think that some human beings had horns. We don't have longhorn cow people.
Wow.
So, yeah. I don't know why. I'm going to try replugging this.
Whoops.
Well, that was weird. Okay, let's see if that made a difference. Did that make a difference on the sound? We'll see. Sometimes things are funky. One never knows.
Yeah, Facebook is having some strange issues.
Yeah, it really is. That was totally weird. So we'll see.
Well, you can always get it off the YouTube. Cliff will have it up on
it'll be on the YouTube
by tomorrow.
So there we go.
Tonight. Yeah,
okay, there you go.
There you go.
So, yeah. Sometimes we're lucky and sometimes we're not.
Okay, so the horns thing.
The horns is one of...
Dispel that.
Well, I mean, clearly,
that's absurd.
It's absurd. Anybody with any kind of logic knows that that's not going to make sense. Another one along those same lines. A lot of things come from not knowing, and stuff gets made up. So some people think that in Islam, Muhammad is as Jesus, and that's not true. Jesus actually is in the Quran and sits at the right hand of God, is the Messiah, is there for Judgment Day.
In the Quran?
In the Quran. Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Yep.
Okay.
But he's more a prophet, less divine. Has to do with how and when and which Christians Muhammad had interface with. Mecca was a caravan stop, and so people came through with a lot of different ideas, and he studied with many different people. So some of the, and however Muhammad received his revelation from the angel Gabriel, some of it was understood. Okay, it failed again. I love this.
Bad technology.
Yeah, it's just one of those days. Okay, we're just not having a good time here. We are not having a good time. We're going to try it again.
She's fighting that tablet.
I am fighting it, so what can I say? Ask a Rabbi. On this beautiful Friday. It is a beautiful Friday. So anyway, no, Muhammad is just a teacher. He's a prophet. They don't call him God. They call him the prophet. Right? Blessings upon him. Right? And it is the proper, respectful way to talk about any prophet. Blessings upon them. Right? It's just it was a more common way of speaking a few generations ago than what we speak modernly or currently, and so that custom stayed within the Arabic community and within the Islamic community, and it stays inside Jewish Orthodox. There's usually a comment made after somebody. May they rest in peace, or may their light continue to shine. It's just a way of honoring a person that we are talking about. It's just a mode of speech. Mm-hmm. It's not any big deal. So Muhammad is a teacher. That was his job, to teach. And when he died, which he did, the Quran lived on. Right? It actually was not codified until some of his successors codified it, and that very often happens with older religious leaders. Not so much true today, when writing things down is easier, and we blog and we podcast and we do all of these other technological things. So religious leaders are out there more, and we don't have to sit and write stuff. We can just do it with things like Ask a Rabbi. People do it for us. But in the old days, it had to be your listeners who listened to the things that you taught, and they wrote down what they remembered, and then that gets transmitted.
Your disciples, if you will.
Your disciples, exactly. Right, those that you teach. And none of us realizes how many people we all teach. We really do. We have phenomenal impacts. One of the tremendous gifts that I was given, a shout out to Rabbi John Spitzer in Canton, Ohio, gave me a wonderful gift when I moved from Ohio to Tucson. What he did is, at a Friday night, he had all of the people that had been in my classes and had interacted with me, and he opened up the congregation and he invited people to give me back what had meant something to them.
Ooh, that's nice.
It was the things that I said casually, or these things like technology is wonderful when it works. These, for lack of a better word, in Tucson they called them Shafirisms, right? The things that I say. And so this group of people with whom I had interacted for years gave me back some insight into the things I had said and done that had meant something to them, and the things that they then taught to others. Right? And
nice.
So it was an incredible gift to show me that my life mattered, that my interaction, even though nobody in Canton probably knows my name anymore, some probably do, but it's not a common name because I'm not there. I'm not in that community, and eventually that'll happen in Tucson as well, and eventually it'll happen anywhere. But the gifts that you leave behind stay.
Sure.
And I got some insight into that. Not a head-swelling kind of thing, but just a kind of more a humbling, if you will, a kind of a beware of what you say and do, because you leave your mark.
Now, see, that's more me.
Right. Well,
I've got several bewares in various cities.
Well, it is important. There's a Jewish prayer that Rabbi, and this is a shout-out to Rabbi Daniel Siegel, who pointed out to me the importance of a prayer. There's a prayer that we say at the end, within a Jewish service, there are 4 rubrics up, if you will, up toward God, and 1 back, because you can't leave in the really upper part. You're like climbing the mountain, and at the top there's silent prayer, the moment between you and God that's private. And at the end of that prayer, there's a meditation that says, dear God, please help me be careful with my lips. May my touch on others be like dust.
Ooh.
Right.
Like that.
Yeah. May my touch on others be like dust. May I think before I speak. May I ignore those who wish me ill. It's some wonderful, really bits of how to interact with people in community, and how to have your aftermath be for good and not for harm.
Yeah.
And that has been just a guideline for me. That has become my go-to prayer. And we sing it every Friday night, every service actually that we have. If we have a daily service, which we do sometimes, or a holiday service, when we're finished with that silent meditation, it's the prayer that we sing coming out of it. And I think it's a good guideline. And, it works from something that Rabbi Daniel Siegel said. He said, when we pray to God, we're talking to God. That's our talking to God, is our prayers. And sometimes, every once in a while, we might think we get an answer. We always get an answer, but sometimes we might be aware of it. And Rabbi Siegel says, beware, though, because it could also be your ego lying to you.
Ooh.
Right, the little g God that's inside you, that wants to fluff you up and make you puffy and bigger than you really are or should be, for your own good even, let alone the good of others. And he said there's a test that he thinks helps you recognize when it's your ego and when it really is the divine. He said the answer is, when you look around at everybody, if you think you are better than them, that's the little ego, little g God.
Sure.
Because you are not. We are all created as human beings. We all have gifts. We all have challenges. We all have lessons to learn and lessons to teach. That's true across the board. God doesn't make junk, period. And when you can see that, when you look at everybody and everything and you see God's reflection in it, we are all created in God's image. God is in all of us. When we see that, then perhaps the answer that we're hearing, in fact, is divine. But if it wants to elevate one group over another, that's not God. That's not God. That doesn't mean be unaware and be immune or not immune. That's the wrong word. You shouldn't ignore danger, because it's real. People do get hurt. People do get harmed, and you should safeguard against that.
What I don't get,
yeah,
and it just really bothers me, especially in the far, in the areas around Israel or Jordan or, Syria, and you see leaders blowing up their own countries. I mean, I can't even comprehend what kind of an individual that would be.
Somebody who clearly benefits from doing that in some way.
Well, I know you always say follow the money.
I sure do. I sure do. And I will continue to say that.
Wow.
Forever. Because it is a problem, right? There is money to be made from warfare. There is political power to be made by keeping the conflict in that part of the world. To that end, no, I'm not going to go to politics. Let's not go there. I came right to the edge and backed away. I try not to get political. I really, really do. Politics is a power game. It's just a power game.
Are we ever going to have peace in Jerusalem?
When we shift the money. When we make it not profitable. When we, the people, stop responding to the power plays. When we evolve enough that we're not blinded by money, blinded by power, when we recognize that the greatest power is in resisting evil. The greatest power is in resisting evil. But it takes people getting together and doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Because, a la Gandhi, right? If everybody peacefully resists and doesn't go down to the... If you go down to the base level, they control you because they know exactly which buttons to push. Even if they don't do it consciously, they'll do it subconsciously. They'll push the buttons to keep you down because that instills fear, and fear is the most immobilizing emotion. Anger is right up there with it as well. And when we can keep those negative emotions at bay and peacefully resist evil and move forward to what's for the greatest good, then, we're going to see peace. But it's going to take people not letting evil thrive.
It's something. This is a total 180, but this is from CNBC News last night, where they were talking about thousands of Orthodox Jews in Brooklyn are not going to take the vaccination.
Yeah. We didn't have a vaccine for the 1918.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And eventually, the people who couldn't resist it died. And the human beings evolved. Is that the path that I think is the best idea? No, I got vaccinated. It is a path. It is a path. I don't know that I agree with it. I think, to me, that goes in the same category. I fly airplanes. I did fly airplanes.
Sure, you're a pilot. Yeah.
But, I also fly in airplanes. I'm willing to go from A to B. I don't live in a non-impact the world life. There are people who do go to the outback in Australia, and you'll see people whose goal is to minimize their impact on nature. If you look at the Giants, same thing, minimize the impact on nature.
Just go to Kansas and see the Amish.
Yeah. Right.
In their little
and if you want
to
do stuff like that, and that can be a very fulfilling life.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different choice. I choose to fly the airplane, and I say, God gave us the intellect to create the airplane, to create the technologies, and with that, the responsibilities to do it responsibly, to not destroy the planet in our quest for additional technologies. Let's be aware of the carbon footprints, if you will, of our actions. What is it? To me, some of the greatest food are these mangoes, because the only thing that happened there was somebody planted a mango tree. I was not the one who planted it. Somebody planted them. I don't know if it was the developer or the people who lived in the house before me, but I'm enjoying their fruit.
Right.
And, there's an old saying, it takes 70 years for an olive tree to have fruit, to have enough edible fruit to be viable. And so...
Did you say 70?
Yes. So...
Whoa!
So that's why cutting down olive trees is so anathema. Right? That's why. Because it takes them so long to establish and grow. And, people live on the farms and on the orchards planted by ancestors who plant them so that their grandchildren will have fruit.
Wow.
Okay, so it takes that kind of, pay it forward.
Sure.
We think we invented pay it forward. No, the ancients did pay it forward because they planted and cultivated for their grandchildren. Not for their children, but for their grandchildren. Because that's what it took.
Wow.
Okay, so part of the challenge is to have some respect for these things that are not easy. Be aware of what you cut down before you cut it down. A saguaro, you know it, it's 30 years until a saguaro blooms. It's 70 years on average until it puts out an arm. Now, once it puts out one arm, it puts out a whole bunch of them. But it has to get to that age. And so, you know, on my property in Tucson, watching a saguaro get its first bulb of an arm was phenomenal. I knew that that saguaro had been there for a very long time, and they are like trees because they're huge and towering.
They are. Oh yeah,
they're a tree wearing a green coat.
They're so beautiful.
They are beautiful, and they're spectacular. And again, that's something you can harvest the fruit from and share. It's very tasty, not just to make candy, but in fact even just to eat. I had a friend in Tucson who taught me how to use the can and the stick and who knows what and the bucket to catch, so that we could eat some of the fruit. Very tasty.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Just amazing.
So yeah, there is an abundance in the world. We have enough if we share, and we can. We don't have to give in to mob rule, but people do. There is something called groupthink, mobthink, and there's a reason why mobs get out of control, why mobs can be incited to do something by somebody who's pulling the strings. Because very often people will abdicate, if you will, their own mental processes to that of the group because there was safety once upon a time in numbers. And with being in the mix of things, providing you don't get trampled. Much more dangerous. We play for higher stakes, I think, today. Although I've got to imagine that there was always danger. And, you know, there's a reason why zebras cluster together, coming back to our zebras. Right? And that's one of the reasons for their stripes, so that a predator can't see an individual animal in order to attack them.
Yeah.
Right? So there's that gut base level safety in numbers kind of thing, because the predator can't isolate, and the predator's not going to jump into a crowd where it could get trampled. It's going to look for the outliers.
Speaking of trampling, have you seen the news this week on those elephants in China that escaped the preserve, and they're just going through the countryside having a great time?
Well, the thing that I noticed about that I got a big that really was that they put the babies in between 3 or 4 adults, so that everybody's touching the baby, and one of them will wake up if the baby does. I thought that was, what a phenomenal care, and when I used to raise dogs back a couple of lifetimes ago, one of the things that I would do with a puppy is I would hold it up against me, and then I would know when it was stirring.
Wow.
Yeah. So there we are, and I guess that's the music that tells me it's a wrap. Thank you for being here with Ask A Rabbi. This is Rabbi Shafir Loeb, Congregation Eitz Chayim, 540 Northwest University Boulevard, Suite 102, www.eitzchayim.org, or catch us on Facebook, where normally Facebook Live works fine.
Except for this week.
Except for this week, yep. And our services are always streamed, and our sanctuary is open.
All right. Have a great week.
Thank you. Plant sale the 27th and 28th. Check Facebook for that.
All right. Have a good week.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
This is WPSL, Port St. Lucie.